to freedom, a Buddhist dialogue in the modern context.
Welcome to the Poyaday discussion program, Path to Freedom, where we discuss the history and topics of Buddhism. Along with me are Sharifa and Varuna at the Valpola Rahula Institute to engage in a discussion with the head of the institute, Venerable Galkanthe Dhammananda Thera, the head of the Department of History of the Faculty of Social Sciences at the University of Kelaniya. Thera, welcome to the show. Great to have you on. Thera, at first, we're going to be discussing the topics of Buddhism, and today we are going to be focusing on the Four Noble Truths. I think to start off the discussion, it is very important to realize what the Four Noble Truths are. Can you actually enlighten us?
Yeah, sure. Yes, it is great pleasure to meet all of you, and after a few months gap. Before going into the introducing Four Noble Truths, I like to share with you the general tendency of looking at the religion as something to worship, believe, and doing rituals, and sometimes identity, and not only that, sometimes the legitimacy, who owns some, the main role of religion is none of these things. These are gradual development, as you introduced as history, part of history. But the real role of the religion is to look at our problems and heal ourselves, and how to understand the others and the connection. And those are the areas that particularly the religion works. And Four Noble Truths, sometimes one may look at when you hear the word Four Noble Truth, you may think something, it is something very something very far away from our day-to-day life to understanding our problems, but it is something spiritual, part of spiritual path. When you go away from the society, and it is something related to that path only. But I like to emphasize, this is something that we can use every day in our life to understand myself, my thought, and the relationships with the other people, and not only the other people, other living being, and the whole nature. Yes. So in that context, I like to introduce the Four Noble Truths, that is dukkha or suffering, and cause of suffering, and the cessation of suffering, and path to cessation of suffering. This is how, dukkha, samudaya, nirodha, marga. These are the four things, and in the discussion, we can share. Yeah. So these are the things: suffering, and causes of suffering, and cessation of suffering, and then path to achieve that, the cessation. So these are the Four Noble Truths.
Just to understand suffering now, in terms of day-to-day life, there are things that may be of minor inconveniences. So people might say, hey, is this suffering, or is this not? It is just a small bump in the road. But if it's something like a huge ordeal, aren't they unavoidable?
I'm sorry, I couldn't follow. Yeah?
Just like huge hurdles, huge losses,
Yeah.
aren't they unavoidable?
Well, I like to look at this, the suffering thing, the way we understand it. Things are changing. Things are always changing, unceasingly changing, and the way we take it, that is where the suffering is. And in this discussion, I like to see these four things as a model of understanding problem, and then how to solve the problem. So in a way, this Four Noble Truths I like to see as a model to understand the problem and to find solution. So your question was whether these
Problems are avoidable.
Yeah, I mean unavoidable in the sense they are a truth of life.
yeah,
Yes, like if you're living, if you have attachments, you're going to have these kinds of losses or these kinds of suffering.
yeah,
In terms of, yes, if you can actually avoid attachment, that is great. But if you are to live in the normal world, in the civil world, you do build up connections. And the reality of the life is, of course, you're going to lose some things. Nothing is certain, as Buddhism says. So in terms of living in the now in the civil society, how can we actually realize this? All right, there is going to be suffering. How can we actually lessen it, or sometimes maybe live with it? Basically, I think that's the lot
Better
of
way
the
to
issues
put it,
here,
yes.
because a lot of people experience these kinds of suffering, and if they have great attractions or great bonds between these people, there's depression. A lot of the people suffer through.
Yeah.
So, in terms of that avenue, are there ways we can actually lessen the impact and not actually suffer or sacrifice these kinds of bonds?
well, yes. Uh, I think in our earlier discussion, last discussion, we talk about the conditional genesis theory, the connectedness
Yeah.
and cause and effects that and what happens, though we, sometimes we discuss these things as topics, these are not part of the way of thinking, the way of understanding things.
Each individual is different.
That's right. Yes, and each individual, very good that each individual is different because each individual is a result of different causes and causes and results. So, I will be a very different person. You are a different person, and you are a different person. I cannot be like you because I am a total different story.
Venerable Thera, you mentioned about the Four Noble Truths. So I would like to know where was the Four Noble Truths originated and why were these considered as the Four Noble Truths?
Well, this is the main teaching in Buddhism, and Buddha's effort was to investigate why people are suffering, and it is not just the ordinary suffering. Even after you become a king or very rich person, still there is emptiness, right? Still unsatisfactedness, and Buddha was investigating why. Okay, and in that it took so many years. He was studying under various teachers and learning and practicing, and at the end, his enlightenment is these are the major things that he revealed. That is, to understand the suffering, and then this kind of, in a way, I like to continue with you to see this as a model to understand problems and the path to solve that. So this is the main teaching of Buddhism, and you cannot discuss about Buddhism forgetting Four Noble Truths. These are the main, and that is why it is called Four Noble Truths. Because, there are truths, right? And this is the noble truths. These are the main and core teachings. So, wherever in Buddha's teaching, it comes.
Venerable Thera, you mentioned that now anybody can go through suffering, even feel an emptiness. So wealth doesn't matter. So sometimes what we feel is that, this person has everything in life. So this person is not going through suffering. So sometimes I guess our main problem is that we do comparisons.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about this?
Well, yes. And always that is there when you have that emptiness, unsatisfactedness, and you think the other person who has those things are, they are happy, and they, because you compare with that person, but that person has a different issue, and you will see, it is nothing to do with having more and more things, but the way you think, and after that, you know. So in Buddhism, it suggests the happiness is with you. It is not with something or with someone, but it is with you. That is one. Second is, it is in this present moment, this moment. This is where, and not after death or it is not. Now, in this present moment, it is with you, not outside, inside.
So doesn't that lead to once again attachment?
Well, yeah. I like to put it in the different words, the way we think. The way we think, that is where the problem is. The way that from our young age, we are in a way trained to think in a particular way. And after that, that training is very much needed to work, but itself become the problem. So we need lots of, how to say, unlearning. Yeah, so that is where, the way we are trained in our schools, in our day-to-day life, by our parents, those are very important knowledge. But what happens, I normally use the word files. We create files based on our, five senses and all the data we collect, and we have files. And after that, once you created a file, you think that file is a reality, and that file, the data in that file is universal. You can use anywhere. And when you see someone maybe with dark skin or with pottu or something, and then you have a file there, and you don't see the person, but you read the file, and this person belongs to that community, this community, these people are like this, that, all these are the, So Buddha, the teaching suggests us to, to wake up and to understand those things that the created things are created in a particular moment, particular condition, based on a limited data that I gathered, and maybe a person, based on a person. That person is not permanent. That person, the next day she will be a different person. But I keep that data based on that particular moment that I collected data. So that is why I think, I try to say the attachment or detachment, that is a different issue. But the way of thinking, and the way of thinking is molded with those limited data, and with that data we have files, and and when things happen, we do not see that person or incident in the present moment. We don't see the person or the actual what happened, but instead we read the file that we have, and that is the problem. That is where the problem.
Venerable Thero, now with your explanation, let's take a look at a practical example in our day-to-day life. We see bonding that happens a lot within families, with your friends, and in your corporates also you make bonds, and sometimes you end up suffering because of some reason. And prevalently in society you can see a lot of breakups happening, a lot of detachments from your family happening, and because they maltreat you sometimes. And then you start suffering because you think maybe you are undervalued, maybe you don't deserve them, something like that. How do we cope with the issue like this? How do you start to think that you can also escape this suffering by making sure that this model applies to us, to our day-to-day life?
Well, when this kind of thing happen, what normally we do is to respond in a way, react to the situation, right? And first thing, we get hurt, right? And after that, with that hurt, you start reacting. And after that, in a way, if you take any case study, any example from your maybe in your company or in your family and among your friends, if you take this kind of your past experience, you can see what really happens after this kind of thing happen. Okay, normally what happens, react, and after that My question is whether we can solve that problem reacting. And instead, we are finding solution. We take that problem into a different level. And after a few months' time, now even you don't remember what happened initially, because now the problem has grown into something else, because the way you respond to it, so the this Four Noble Truth, I suggest as a model to solve our day-to-day problems, and any problem, whether it is in the family or company or somewhere. Normally, what this is the process. Okay, this is what happens. Really, what happens is this, and this, instead thinking of Four Noble Truth as something very spiritual away from our life, we will take it back to our lives. Okay, and when something happens, understand it, identify it as a suffering. Okay, any that kind of treatment, by your friends or family member or someone. First thing is you get hurt, and after that the process starts reacting. What I suggest, without reacting it, let's apply this model. Okay, that treatment as suffering, and without going into reacting, let's go into the second level, causes of suffering. Why this happened? Okay, and in our previous discussion, as we there we discussed everything is conditioned and causes and results. Okay, so when something happen, there will be main cause also, but there is no one reason for something. There will be many, and if we can identify, if we can take a paper and note down what are the causes of this kind of behavior from my mother, from your wife or your boss, you can identify why. Okay, you can have a list of things what created him or her to respond in that particular way. Okay,
And if I disturb you for one second.
Please.
Now, if we think like this, if we think that maybe the reason why I'm hurt is because I'm sharing a very strong bond, and maybe expecting too much, is that also can that also be one of the reasons, one of the major reasons, rather than them doing something wrong?
Yeah.
Can that be also a fault where I expect a lot from the other person? Is that also?
Are you talking about in terms of you imagining this person
Yeah,
should
to be-
respond in this way,
Exactly,
your
yeah.
ideal image of that person?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yes, and I think that file I mentioned the file. I have a file regarding her, regarding you, and when something happen, it is not what is expected in our data in our file, right?
Yeah.
So then this thing starts. So that is where I said the file data in the file you have gathered in a particular level, particular moment. Okay, now he or she is in a different mood and different level. Now the clash starts. Data says something, the behavior is different. Now the so
That's when the
yeah, that's right.
So exactly from this point, I think what we need to consider is living in the moment, as
Present.
present moment, as Venerable Thera mentioned previously. So how do we get there? Now, I think suffering and identifying the causes of suffering, obviously it's easier said than done, but when an individual is suffering, it can be a very minor issue. Usually I can consider something really small as suffering, but another person would say, is that even a problem?
Yeah.
So each individual is different, but when you're suffering, what happens is you're not in the right mindset to jot down as to what happened. As Venerable Thera very correctly mentioned, we have a set of expectations and a file in our head where we think, okay, we need to get this kind of a response from an individual.
Yeah.
So how can we come to that point of understanding the Four Noble Truth and work according to it? How do we calm ourselves when we suffer?
Well, I think what I try to say in Buddhism, in fact, this is the Buddhism, what we have today in the country is something, as I mentioned, that something identity and rituals and so this has to be part of our training, and this particular teaching suggests us to practice, to be in the present moment. This is integral part of this religion, to train to live in the present moment. That meditation that is suggested, that breathing exercise, we train ourselves to be in the present moment. This has to be part of, instead of mal puja and all these things, this is the core things in Buddhism. We are discussing this after 2500 years, and in this journey we have lost many things, many valuable things. These things has to be part of, and in fact this has nothing to do with a particular religion, and we all, if we can practice to be in the present moment, then when something happen, we can go, this is what, without carrying away, instead of be aware what is happening. So it is not just unpractical. It is not something that those who are very much this is something very simple. If we train it, if we train it in our life to be be aware what is happening. So that is where I say the normal tendency is to respond, react. Instead of reacting, please, I suggest to, if you react, you take the problem into a different level, and you cannot solve after that. That is,
Sometimes our reaction can actually lead to a bigger problem.
That's right. That's right. And many problem in the society, or in the country, it is the same. When something happen, without finding causes, we react it, and after that the problem becomes something bigger, and after that it is very difficult to solve the problem. So that is why I suggest this as a model. And once you identify, if you can list down, this is a model. This is not something we cannot practice. We can, right? We can do that if we try. I really like if we can take a case study and to whether we can identify causes. At least we will not be able to list out everything, but we will be able to have some idea that created this kind of behavior. And after that, if these are the reasons behind this behavior, then after having this list of things, then our anger or the sadness will reduce. These are the reasons. Okay, if these are the reasons, then we can think of the next level without reacting to it, how I adjust myself, or how I rephrase my words, my sentence, to talk with that person. If we do not go into this level, we will immediately react, and that escalate the problem. So that is where I suggest this as a model. This as a model. And in my life, I have practiced this so many places. I am the head of the Department of History there. When I became the head, there was a problem. But what I did, instead of reacting it, I list out what are the causes. And I change my way of interacting. And, within few months' time, and now it's a very different level, and we are in a, no one remember the problem now. We are in the different level. That's why I say this is something very practical model. Any situation, I suggest to the viewers to take any situation and try to apply this model.
Actually, going towards what you said about the case studies, and of course being a university head as well. Now, a lot of the stuff that we hear about students, they have great expectations and they have high standards set for them. And we experience or we see a lot of students undergoing depression because of these expectations, or failing to meet them, or not meeting their ideal standards as what they portray themselves to be, or something like that. in terms of Four Noble Truths, how can those students apply that particular aspects to their depression to overcome that? Because that is also a form of suffering, depression. It is suffering within yourself. Sometimes maybe due to external factors, but sometimes most of the time it is internal. So how do you actually apply that there?
I have two answers to your question. One is to how to help those young people to face
Come
that
over it.
yes. But before that, I like to go into the the problems that they are facing is created by ourselves. Okay, from young age, we 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 made them to go for competition. Okay, and be better and get marks more than the others, be the first in the class, and get the highest results. And the teachers also promoted that. Okay, parents and teachers, and always appreciated who gets
Highest mark.
highest. And we all together train them to be the first, and you cannot be the first without making second. Okay, so we are the people who created that the second one is inferior to the first. Okay, so the second one who becomes second start getting that the feeling that you said. Okay,
Not dealing with losses and
that's
you know,
right.
sure.
That's right. And the schools, we put up pictures. She is the first in the district or something like that.
Yeah.
So we in this education, we never in our family or school, we never taught them to work as a group. Okay, and we if you are not good at mathematics, how I can help you, and that was not trained. Instead of how to be the
It's a
first
lot
in
of competition.
competition, and that competition creates, it is unavoidable, that creates someone suffering, someone with the tension. And to reduce that, first thing is, why can't we train them to, one will be good at one thing and the other one will be good at something else. Why can't we appreciate both? Okay, this is, it is the, after that, this is the results of, this depression and all that we created. And so the first thing I suggest is to, we need lots of change when we work with children and children's education as a family parents, how to appreciate children, not to go for competition. You are okay, you are good as you, right?
Exactly, as you very correctly mentioned, everything starts at home. So this is a universal problem, I would say, because it applies to everything. It can be studies, it can be your workplace, because if you're good, you get a better pay. But if you're not, you don't. So obviously, this is something unavoidable. But I guess, as Venerable Thera very correctly mentioned, it should start from home. So how do we, because we can't stop the curriculum, we can't stop the system, because that's already there, and I don't think it could be changed anytime soon. So how can we change the mindset of the child to understand that this is there and make this a healthy competition?
Yeah, I the second question, and thank you for, well, there again we have to be, I think, one thing I in a way little disagree with you. We can change. Okay, we will discuss these things, we will bring these things wherever we can, all the platforms, and that is how we will have a different methods of education, different way of looking at the whole thing. So that is one thing. Second is, yes, the people are with depression, people are with so what we can do, you in your question you said that when you get good results, you will, when you perform well, you will be well paid, you will, and after that what? you get lots of money. After that, what are you happy? That does that give, and so I think if we can bring that, you can earn lots of things, lots of money. After that, what you can do? Okay, you will have good food, but how much you can eat? Okay, and so it is again the way we think, right? So what I suggest, when everyone, the whole society is forcing young people to be competitive and be the first, and after that, the depression or the problems that they are facing is the result of that. And after that, we are trying to, without addressing the causes, we try to, and of course, we have to help them. We have to, but without pointing out what created that depression. Okay, I think the solutions that we give will be very temporary. So that is why we have to make them understand you are already good, you are already doing well, and do not compare, as you suggest, do not go to compare with others. You are doing very well, and everyone is unique. And why, so you no need to be someone, you no need to be do something like someone. The way you do is perfect. So this is unique. And so that conditional genesis theory, I'm a different story, you are a different story, we are four different people. And if we try to make you, someone different, we are erasing you. And why, you are a good story, so it is again the way we think, change the way we think. And there are no, I'm talking from Buddhist point of view, there are no one in this world created by someone like, so if that is the case, we can ask, can you change me to something, it is not. I am the result of my past. Past means from my childhood, not even from childhood, even from the moment I get conceived in my mother's, womb, I was a different person. And from that, the experiences my mother faced, and then from my childhood, my stories, and all these experiences created me, right? So it is to, if we can do something, it is to make a friendly atmosphere, kinder society, and then we will see a different person. If our path is full of wounds, sadness, and then, then competition, I am the result of that whole story, right? So, yeah.
Yes, I also have a feeling now when it comes to talking about society norms, and these norms are mostly created by the adults rather than we point out at the kids and say you have to change, but these changes are imposed on them by the adults because they create the paradigms for these. So changes are done like that as well, but when it comes to bonds that we share as adults and as children, we try to maintain them as much as possible because that kind of gives us an achievement, like a target to reach, because you can grow with them, maybe you can be somebody else and then you can evolve into a better person at the end. But I also have this feeling when it comes to sharing bonds, sometimes the suffering is caused by these bonds, and don't you think letting go of these bonds would be like a good start for this? And letting go, then you don't have anything to worry about. Is that good?
Yes, to let go, again we have to understand, right? And you are a different story, I'm a different story, right? And you work particular way, I work particular way, and the problem starts with that, the file that I have, I expect something. Once you understand you are a different story, I am ready, right? And you are a different story, I am different story. And things are changing unceasingly, and you are changing, I'm changing. I think, imagine young couple, okay, they fall in love, and we think that, you know, in the process, in the life, one may think that he is different now, she is different now, and he or she doesn't understand that person also is not the same person now. Okay, so the change of the other person we see, not the change of oneself, right? We both are changing. And if we, you know, let go is not just think of I let go things, with that understanding, right? Once you understand, once you see these things, there is nothing for us to hold, grab, right? Things are changing. That person is no more there. That moment is no more there. My file I have, the data I have is not valid anymore because the situation is changed. The person who collected those data is changed. The person, the based on, okay, the data I gathered is changed. Now, what I am grabbing, what I am holding, there is nothing for me to hold. The things are, you know, everything is changed, but I have some notion, I am having something in me. So, let go mean it is not just
Just abandoning things.
yeah,
It's not just abandoning
to
things.
see this. Once you see this thing, there is nothing for us to hold.
It's
It is,
letting go of your emotions and the way we have been judging. And I think let go in the sense, Varuna,
Yes.
it's about, I guess, what I presume is that
Yeah.
basically you've got to
Exactly
calm
right.
down
Yeah.
and think and maybe focus on what went wrong
Yeah,
and
and
how
also-
different we are.
And also, I've seen like people who sometimes to go to this stage, they go through a lot of suffering, and then they somehow come to this point of life where they just honestly just let go and go somewhere and then meditate, maybe in some rural area. So that's also one way of them escaping their suffering, so that they don't have to worry about anything. Is that an escape or is that a solution? Is that both?
that depends. That
I mean,
depend-
in
yeah.
terms of that, I want to ask, like, in terms of, like, in day-to-day life, you have those connections, then you have responsibilities.
Yeah.
When do you become irresponsible versus ceasing of contact? You know,
Exactly.
you can be, you know, when you have a child or if you have someone who's dependent on you,
On you.
you say, all right, I'm done. That's, of course,
That's
I
irresponsible,
think
right?
it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah. That's why,
unacceptable. I mean, in terms of that, where is that point, I guess, in terms of, right? In
Yeah.
terms of
Letting
Vipatti,
go.
like, letting go.
Yeah.
Sure, I think we are
Because
all
you have to have connections, you have to have
Yeah.
those responsibilities,
That's
and you have to
right.
be
That's
accountable.
right. Yeah.
Sure, I think we are all trying to find the
Yeah.
point of start, and we
Yeah.
can't find it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think if
I
we
think
apply it
get
properly, then we can start
Yeah.
we can just know how to do it, because we are all lost in this and trying to find how to, stop worrying. Because we're all worrying because we share bonds, and then bonds are what actually
Responsibilities,
keeps us,
as Ovin mentioned.
intact. So,
What I try to say, that's why I said that depends, because someone who doesn't have any more responsibilities to family, no children, one decide, okay, I will go to a
Mountain and-
Yeah.
and I will be
Aram, and just-
that's but someone has those things and responsibilities, and as a male person can decide to go.
True.
And but the female, sometimes she can't do the take the same steps.
responsibilities.
Yeah. So that is why I instead of having some issue by issue solutions, okay, to see this as a whole, and all the notions that we have, okay, these are files, as I said, created based on different context, and based on our knowledge, education, and whatever. And if we see how these files are created, how things change, and then the as I suggested, that the ideas we have doesn't really reflect what we see. If we see these things, I think the question letting go doesn't arise, already you are there. Okay, you do not grab it because there is nothing to grab. That is why I said that depending on the situation, going away from the society will be a solution. I say depending on the situation means depending on the person who doesn't have any family bond and free and think that I will go to a somewhere isolated place and do that will be, but you all are with the family, with the society, and you have responsibilities, and in a way we cannot be away from those responsibilities. We have our parents, and and suddenly you can't decide I will go away from, it is not the answer. Then how? Okay, that is where I suggest, like what happens, our the society that we are living, instead of going into deep to understand the whole, we, like, if we have a headache and we get some tablet and have it, and after that over and go, something like that. So the word letting go also we will understand like taking a tablet. Okay, what I suggest, it is not. Letting go is not just I let it go, but the way we understand as a whole. Once we see that there is nothing for us to grab, that is what I always suggest. There will be techniques, but what I suggest to understand the whole, and that is where we see where that letting go fits. Okay, letting go is not just I let it go, but when we see the whole thing. Okay, imagine we are talking about a person's behavior. If we know the journey of that person's person, with lots of wounds and all that, or maybe he or she is facing difficult situation, that is what created this particular behavior. Okay, once we see that, and after that we don't have anything to hold, and we understand. Okay, that is where I think this the model, okay, the cause of the suffering, causes of suffering. Okay, among the causes of suffering, as you said, the way we look at that person, that is where the problem is. If we change the way of looking at, after that we can have the solution. So I do not suggest the answer is to go away from the society, but to be with the society, but the way we look at myself and the others and the environment, and then I think we can live within this society, and as I suggested, the happiness now in this present moment, and that comes with that understanding.
Thera, now, of course, continuing along this discussion, I want to touch upon the history of the Four Noble Truths. You said at the beginning this is a core value in Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism. Now, also, in the prior discussions we had, we talked about the history of Buddhism in the sense, in the 2,500 years it has evolved, and of course there have been different sects, and there are different avenues of Buddhism, there are different disciplines. Is this a core principle in all teachings of Buddhism?
Yes. All the Mahayana, Theravada, both the traditions, Four Noble Truth is fundamental, and it is there.
So, in the evolution process, this has been the core value in the Tripitaka itself.
Yeah. Because these are the these are the core things, and you cannot discuss about Buddhism disregarding these four. These are the fundamental things.
Thank you, Thera, for that valuable input. And with that, we will be winding up today's discussion with Venerable Galkhande Dhammananda Thera. And that's it for me, Varuna and Sharifa, as we say goodbye to you.